Hello fellas, welcome back to another episode here on my channel. Long time has it been now since I've uploaded properly, and I do apologize for that. Uploading has been really slow because of reasons in my private life, and it's kind of hard to talk about. I primarily try not to, but I also want to inform you when shit goes down the drain. Recently things have not been easy, but I am going to do my damnedest to try and make up for it. We'll see what I can do. For now anyways, I thought it would be fitting to upload a video about D&D, because it was a very long time ago since we spoke about that. And the last time we did, we spoke about the horrible realities of furries. Or rather, a fantasy that they wish they could live. I'm glad they can't though. Especially that guy. Yeah. Alright. Today though, we are going to talk about something that I've teased to you about in my community section. And a lot of you are probably quite curious as to what the fuck the fat blob of fuck is doing in the middle of the screen. Well, now you're gonna get your response, because this is the story of my own character and his exploits during his very few but very fun adventures. This is one of the stories of my character, Ezgil Kovak. Let us begin. So, it all starts actually with a very interesting anecdote. You see, the thing about Ezgil is that his creation was out of necessity, rather than that of something that has been imagined for a long period of time. You see, Ezgil's origin, quote-unquote, was as that of a very interesting druid that I had brewed up. I had an idea of essentially a plague bearer of Nurgle priest, almost. Imagine essentially an ogre Nurgle priest, in terms of size anyways. He had a massive smile that was like that of a greater demon of Nurgle, and actually he was starting to mutate to sort of become like one, but he was far less pestilent than that of an actual greater demon, and he looked kind of interesting. His entire ordeal was that he was supposed to be kind of a necromantic druid, that whatever he transformed into as an animal would be undead, for example. But, well, the thing was, this didn't really fit in with the people in question that I was playing with. We had some requirements on us. To begin with, we were supposed to make level 20 characters, so this was an epic campaign. We were also supposed to have neutral good characters. Any form of good alignment was required. So I couldn't play my lawful evil, well, druid chaos worshipper-ish, and as such I had to restructure him. And so I did, and Ezgil became something not like his first iteration. Actually, quite the opposite. And let me tell you what I managed to brew up. So, Ezgil's background, let's begin there. Ezgil, we don't know much about him. His background states that he's, well, someone from the land. He's native to most terrain as he is a wanderer. He's a murder hobo pretty much, but a peace-loving one. His ordeal and ideal is essentially that he is a wandering tree shepherd, essentially. He looks after the forest and makes sure that everything is in accordance with balance of nature. Just like that of any other druid, really. It's not that different. We don't know who his parents was, we don't know his village of origin, and he refuses to tell. However, he does on occasion talk a very brief bit about said place that he came from. We do know that it is somewhat of a town-sized area that he came from, but we also know that, well, the town was very noble in a very interesting sense. Because the place in which he heralds from, it is said that having a big gut is a sign of nobility. And the thing with Ezgil, he's a human that is as large as an ogre in fat and muscle. And I'm not kidding, this guy is morbidly obese. He weighs around 400 kilos, and he is one big heavy fucker. But still, he is strong as fuck. Imagine Fat Bastard from Austin Powers. That's Ezgil, in a nutshell, but bigger. It's stupid, but that's the entire idea. And the best part about that is the fact that even though he is the size of a fucking barn, this guy can move normally. He can jump, run, and sprint, do everything normally. He is actually slightly above average when it comes to his body strength, but even then, he is fat as all shit, so no one understands how this is the case. Well, that's where two questions pops up. How the fuck did he become this fat? And why the hell is he moving so gracefully even though he's this overweight? There's two answers to this, and those two answers came out of two requirements. So when it came to this campaign, we were supposed to have one item with us that was essentially legendary, one legendary item per player. And then there was supposed to be one rumor circulating about us as well, so we didn't look entirely perfect, And when I heard this, I began experimenting. Now, the town that he comes from, it is known that having a big gut is considered a sign of nobility, and because this guy is so bloody fat, he would be considered essentially a bloody king. Now, the reason though why he is so fat is believed because, well, he ate everyone. Yes, it is believed that he ate every single inhabitant. The reason why is because he doesn't talk about his past that much, he mentions it very, very briefly and very carefully, and then again, the only universal thing we know about is that the place where he came from, having a big gut, is a sign of nobility. And not only that, but, well, the place where he comes from is considered to be lost and gone, probably one of the overgrown towns that has just been left to rot because, well, the people died, or they moved away. Or Ezgil. Oh well. Rumor about him being a fat-ass cannibal notwithstanding, however, there has to still be an explanation to how he can move so gracefully even though he's fat as a truck. Well, the reason to that is even funnier. The item that I picked was the Belt of the Fire Giants. Now, the Belt of the Fire Giants is a very interesting item because what it does is that it gives the player 26 strength. It doesn't give 25 strength, as it merely puts the player at 26 strength. So if you have a base of 14 in strength, let's just say, if you put that item on, your base becomes 26, if I've understood it correctly. Can't confirm, but I think that's something along the line of how it is. Now, the thing about him, though, is very interesting because he has this belt regardless of if he's played as a level 20 character or just a level, 2 or 3 character. And the interesting workaround is the following. He uses a fuck ton of that belt's strength to just be able to act fucking normally because he's so fucking obese. He is stronger than an ogre. He could wrestle an ogre. But, well, that's just because that's how he was in the campaign. Any other campaign where such an item was not, permitted to be had upon start of the game, well, he could have that item, but he couldn't have any strengths and benefits of the item because it pretty much nullifies the fact that he is so fucking overweight. So yes, he literally has a belt that gives him the strength of a giant, but he uses virtually all of that strength to make sure that he can be still standing. I thought that was a really interesting workaround gimmick that can just be used for any session, be it epic or not. And it was just godlike perfect. And another funny little antic about him is the fact that he has the ability to, of course, transform into animals like any other druid. But when he does so, because of the fact that he wants to show his pride, his gut, he does have a lot of pride in his gut. So, what does he do? Well, whenever he transforms into an animal, that animal too becomes obese as fuck. So yes, during the campaign I did transform to a fair bit of animals, and my god, that was interesting to see people's reactions when a very overweight owl landed on top of a spire of a castle. Oh lord, that was fun. Now, could there be more things about him that is interesting? Yes. His name, Ezgil Kovak. The thing is, it's Polish. Well, the name, I don't know if it's actually Polish, but it's supposed to sound Polish. And the thing is that he has a very special antic about him as well that is inherited from Polish people, at least around where I live. You see, Where I live, Polish people are primarily renowned for being berry pickers and mushroom pickers. As such, I decided to design one of his little abilities differently. Druids have an ability where they are essentially able to travel between trees, and I decided to rework this ability so that he primarily travels through berry bushes by essentially, well, jumping into them. Imagine it for yourself, if you will. Imagine Fat Bastard from Austin Powers running towards you. Then you sidestep him, and what does he do? He keeps running, because in front of him there is just bushes, and you don't understand what he's doing. Then he swan dives, just makes a beautiful swan dive, 10 out of 10, straight down into the bush. But instead of crashing and causing Hiroshima 2.0, he just into the bushes, just disappears. He sinks in, just rattling the bushes a little bit, and disappears completely. And then he jumps up 20 feet away with blueberries in his mouth and a lot of it squished around his face. That's pretty much his ability. Now, he has one more trait about himself, and that is the fact that when he transforms into an animal, he, of course, can sound like the animal. Druids, of course, can sound like a crocodile if they transform into a crocodile. They can also speak normally, I think, or telepathically. I am not entirely certain. But regardless, he had a very special minor disadvantage in that he could actually not sound like the creatures in question. He thought he could, but he could not. So whenever he would try and sound like a horse, he wouldn't sound like a horse. He would speak the word that would define what a horse sounds like, but he could not in any way, shape or form replicate their sound. And the best part about him, he sounded depressed all the time. Now, he wasn't edgy or anything like that, no. It was more along the line of me trying to impersonate a famous Swedish character by the name of G.W. Persson. G.W. Persson is a famous crime investigator here in Sweden. He is also famous for having written many books, but what he is also very famous for is his character. You see, he is very interesting because of the fact that the way he sounds like he's constantly really hungover or really drunk and really tired. Always. This is because of the fact that he has some diseases and he has to take a lot of medications against them, and that's why partly he sounds like that. And it's a very interesting ordeal. I decided to sound like him primarily because of the fact that I thought it would be a very fitting thing, because he's a very respected character, and he's a very funny character in that sense, because he always sounds like this.
Ja, och där var då
So whenever I was playing him, that's how I sounded like when I spoke. So to summarize, he's a depressed sounding fat ass from Poland, who has very weird abilities and antics, and even though he's massively obese, he can still move unhindered. This is Ezgil Kovak. And we're not going to end there, not in the slightest. We are now going to tell one of the stories that I have about the times that I've gotten to play Ezgil. And we are of course going to pick the first time, as it was the most iconic time. So, let us begin. It all starts in a forest, during nighttime. My friends, a rogue and a mage, is currently taking a carriage ride pulled by two horses as they are going through the night and looking at the stars and trying to get some rest. Me, on the other hand, is pulled on a different cart, already asleep, and it's of course pulled by four horses. Not much happened really, we just rest and have a fairly decent time. But then, out of nowhere, we hear a scream in the forest. We immediately get alert and I wake up sluggishly, and around us, something happened. Creepy shadows are moving from around the trees, and it seems as if though it is a horde that is slowly surrounding us. A sluggish horde of zombies as they come into the moonlight. They are trying to grapple us and take us down, but we have to try and fight our way through. And with relative ease, as you'd expect from level 20 characters, we manage to fight them. However, this wasn't everything, because we did hear a scream after all, and we still heard it. The person in question that this came from was in the forest, so my mage friend, me, and the rogue darted for it on their own individual horses. I, however, was not pulled by any of the horses, as well, they didn't want to let me sit on them. I became a little sad, so I transformed into a giant moose. Now in the game, there is a level 5 creature, if I remember correctly, that is essentially a dire moose. They are just bigger mooses. Now, the thing about these mooses is that they are considered sometimes by certain people to be signs of gods coming down in mortal form to, well, wander the plains of the mortals. And that's essentially the form they take, a giant moose, the king of the forest. And, well, that's what I did, transformed into a moose. And so, I started to run through the forest, and actually managed to run past my two friends, surprisingly enough. And then, I saw it. In front of us, there was 3 ogres. The ogres were currently dismantling a cart, and currently preparing some form of pot. And as it seemed, one of them was reaching underneath the cart, as it hadn't been fully dismantled, only partly. Underneath the cart, there was the screaming person, a woman. She was very scared, it seemed, and the ogre in question tried to grab a hold of her, and was very close as getting her. However, with good rolls and decent startup, I was the one that started off the round by charging the ogre. And I managed to do so very effectively. The woman underneath keeps screaming until eventually the sound of the breathing ogre is overheard by that what sounds like trampling hordes, and even the ogre itself looks to the left and gets simply swatted away and taken by the moose. I knock the ogre and it follows me into the forest, where I manage to kill it by using my horns to essentially rip the fucker apart. And as I do, the ogre dies of blood loss. The woman in question, however, during all of this, very slowly, very panicked, reacts by slowly and steadily go outside, go away from underneath the carriage to look at what just saved her. And as she stares to the left, she sees something. I look behind me and see that she is looking at me. So, in order for me to look very beautiful and almost noble-like, I decide to go away from the darkness by stepping into the moonlight and looking like a true king of the forest. And I do precisely that. I go into the moonlight and present myself as that of a king of the forest, a very large moose that is hilariously overweight. Now, if you remember what I described earlier, I transform into animals that also become overweight. So even though this could technically be looked upon by her as a sign of a god in mortal form, she was a little bit unsure of what to feel about this, now that the moose was obese, morbidly so, and was still capable of moving. Imagine this, a moose in the moonlight trying to look graceful and beautiful, but it's obscured by its own fucking fat-ass belly that makes it forward from underneath it. And I can still for some reason move, which is a miracle. But hey, then again, God in mortal form. She was quite literally shocked and stunned at this, and so my friends managed to rush in and help me take care of some of the other creatures around. The other ogres were easily taken care of, and then we were about to dart it. And as we were about to do so, more ogres appeared from within the forest. The mage and the rogue went up on their individual horses, and the mage picked up the woman and said, "We're gonna help you escape." And so they rushed away. They already knew that I had the capability of transforming into animals, but the setting is put in such a fashion that magic in this realm is very rare. Very few people actually are gifted with magic, and as such it is not frowned upon, but it is somewhat scary to the locals, as they so very seldomly see it. And very powerful magic, like transforming into massive beasts, even more so. So, even though my friends know that I can transform into creatures, they are just not unsure of how big a creature I can transform into, and we'll get an example of this shortly. So, they pick up the woman, and they're about to dart it. And so, well, I try to run. But as I do so, my fat ass cheeks get grabbed by one of the ogres. And so, 5 ogres jump my ass and pile me. And of course, I'm trying to break the fuck away. And they're tearing me limb from limb. The woman in question apparently sees this, but doesn't react because, well, she's in a panicked state. But she sees it happening. And what happens next? Apparently she also witnesses. Because as my form dies, I then decide that, well, fuck this, I'm transforming into something else. And that's when I decided to transform into a young red dragon. Yes, as I was piled by these ogres, I transformed into a red dragon. Now this would have been a very cool scene, you know? Imagine you being jumped, and then you're just swamped by these major enemies, and you're just drowned in body. And what happens then when everyone thinks you're gone? You transform into a badass dragon. However, it's overweight. As fuck. It's like a bumblebee with scales. You don't see this thing flying. But here it is. And that's exactly what happened. I knock the fuckers away from me and transform into a big dragon. And as I fly up to the sky, I am of course going to do a mighty roar to scare them away. And so I do. I take a massive breath and I exhale with all my mighty roar. The ogres were described as visibly confused, and my friends were unsure as to what the fuck that was, because it echoes through the forest with the same fucking decibel that a dragon roar would have. It just sounds so mundane and boring and depressing that it might as well be Eeyore, for all we know. And that's pretty much it. I sound like fucking Eeyore doing a dragon impression. And, well, what happens then? I kill one more ogre before I fuck off and fly away with my floppy ass belly. And of course I fly in the direction of the horses. Now, the thing is, as I'm flying after them, the woman panics. She did not see fully that I transformed into a dragon. She knew that there was a dragon after them because she saw me appear. She just didn't connect the fact that I transformed. Again, this ties in because of the fact that magic is so hilariously rare in this realm. Now, as I fly after them, even my friends are a bit unsure as to what the fuck is going on. So, my friend is actually contacting me telepathically and notices that, wait, he is the dragon. Oh, okay. And then he just tells me, look, okay, you're scaring the shit out of the woman, fly away please, and try and come back to the camp as, I don't know, a horse or something that was led astray, and do that. My character replies,
Do I really have to? I just want to go back to the court and make a camp maybe, and rest.
To which my friends were like, no, don't. It's best if you just stay as a horse. This woman has seen enough, and seeing you the size of an ogre might scare the shit out of her again, so let's just be cautious. I didn't like the idea, but I went with it. So I flew away. A little while later, I came back to the camp, and they immediately knew that I was there because obese horse. Dead giveaway. And my friend was kind of starting to become annoyed at the fact that I was fat and he didn't understand it. Regardless, he just sighed and shrugged. So, whilst we were making camp, or rather they were making camp, they asked the woman how she was doing and what happened. The woman said that they were attacked by these ghouls or bandits, you know, the zombies we faced, and, well, her husband tried to make a steering maneuver to try and get away. That, well, escalated by them running straight into the forest, and it was a fair bit in. And, well, they crashed. And upon crashing, even though the ghouls were gone, the ogres found them. And upon them finding them, well, yeah, her husband is not alive anymore, let's just put it that way. So, she was quite shocked still, and was not sure as to what to do. And then she started recapping of what just happened. How she was saved by a moose that was really fat? She sounded so uncertain, but my friend knew exactly and gave me the stink eye. Of course, I wasn't turned towards him during this time, so in response I just took a steaming shit whilst he looked. She kept recapping to the event that just transpired of how the mage had helped them good and how the rogue also had helped very well by killing off some more ogres, and how shocked and surprised she still was over her husband being eaten before her, and how she also was unsure if she really was saved by a fat moose and a big fat dragon. My character just replied with,
"Nay."
My friend the mage gave me the stink eye yet again, and the woman looked at my direction, with a look of having just given in. So, right after that, she went to sleep. And for the nearest 4 days, I was a horse, and had to ride towards the nearest city, which was 4 days away. And we managed to get there in time, and upon us getting there, we delivered the woman so she could get some help, and we talked to the local mayor, who had given us the assignment to come to that local town. So, as we had spoken to him, he told us that, well, I have another mission for you three. You see, there are some disturbing disappearances currently happening, as around the entirety of the country, towns and villages just go silent, and we do not know why or how. As such, we would like you guys to have a little bit of a look, see what you can find in these villages that have gone quiet. The nearest one is only 2 days away by horse, so you should be able to get there soon. I do advise that you depart as soon as possible, but of course, you may rest at first. And, well, we did. We took a day or two to simply just pick up some food and prepare for a lengthy trek that might not result in us coming back 2 days later, let's just say. During the day, we picked up food and other supplies and made the best preparations we could in preparation for tomorrow's departure, as we would go in the morning, as we decided. Now, upon my mage having gathered everything he needed, he was a tired man and wanted to go to bed. He went to the local tavern, and in said local tavern, he found me, eating blueberries and drinking beer. So yeah, I was sitting by the bar, fat and a little sweaty, eating blueberries and drinking beer. He was too tired to even give a shit, so he simply bought a room key and was ready to relax for the evening. And when he sat by my table, I simply told him that,
"Oh, well, we are going to depart tomorrow, I guess."
To which he simply replied, "Yes," but I'm sure he was not able to finish his sentence, for it was interrupted by a sneaking, cracking, and flapping fart that smelled like death. This time he stared at me, horrified, to which I simply looked back at him and said,
"What? Blueberries give me gases. Oh, by the way, I have fixed us a room, so we will share."
To which he simply threw the key in my face and left, wide-eyed and scared. The rogue, however, decided not to sleep in an inn because, well, he was a cheap cunt, so he decided to simply break in somewhere and sleep somewhere else. He found a local barn in the town and decided that this would be a very nice place to sleep at if I could just get up there. Rolling some decent acrobatic skills, he managed to climb up on the barn's wall to a rounded window at the top, very close to the roof. It was hay all around him, and he thought that this would be a decent spot to simply lay down, so he made it comfortable for himself and did so. Then he had to roll for initiative.
What the fuck?
He failed. And what would you know? He got jumped by a woman.
Hey.
Someone was actively wrestling him and holding him down. He was not able to push this person off, whoever it was. But he did notice one thing. This person was skilled. Because this person held him down good. And not only that, this person was able to unzip and draw down his pants. You can see where this is going, aren't you? And lo and behold, in the moonlight it appeared that before him was a woman that had jumped him, and she began to undress herself. And, well, he was remarkably tired, and he could not resist, so Well, after that, he had to roll another check, which he failed, and that led him to getting raped by a woman who forced him to have sex with her. And even though he could only remember it vividly, well, it all kind of just blacked out for him there. So, yes, interesting encounter. As you can tell, this story is a little bit different, and it was primarily for the purpose of just having stupid, retarded fun. So let us go till next day. We started off the good morning with the rogue. The rogue woke up, and he felt weird. He had, after all, last night been banging quite a fair bit, he believed, and upon having a check, it appeared that, well, he had been banging almost all night. And when he asked the GM if it was any good, he just rolled the dice. A D20. He rolled a 7, to which he said, it was more pain than pleasure, but yeah, you should check that. So, he did. He pulled down his pants because he felt really weird. And it turned out that it was really weird, because, well, his genitalia had swollen to shit. So, he was actually very sore, and it hurt him a lot. So, what did he do? Well, he decided that he had to get the fuck out of here. He didn't want to climb down the, well, same way he came, because now it was daylight and people could see him and he could be caught and shit. So he decided to try and sneak down through the bar and go through some other direction. And he did just that. He went down and tried to find an exit. And, well, he found an exit, but not the one he thought. He left the barn, yes, but he ended up inside somebody's house. And, well, as he came into this house, he heard someone singing to themselves, just very low, like a hum in the wind, and he was unsure of who it was. When he checked, around the corner, by the stove, stood a naked man with only an apron. A fairly muscular man with only an apron. God damn it. My friend became very scared. He was not sure at this point if it was a woman he had truly banged, but according to the GM, it was. But regardless, he was very uncertain. So he just wanted to make sure that he could get the fuck out of there before the boy toy realized. And, well, he sneaked very well past, and managed to get the fuck out. However, as soon as he went out, he felt a very big urge. His balls were burning at this point, and he needed them to cool down a lot. And outside of the house was a fountain. He went up to it, took down his pants, and then started to squat down into the fountain and used his hand to try and get water to rub his very, very red and swollen scrotum. And when this happened, he heard someone scream, "What the fuck are you doing?" And right behind him was the man. He was pretty angry seeing a half-naked man standing and squatting over his fountain and washing his balls with the water they used to drink and for festivity purposes. And, well, he started chasing him throughout the yard with a frying pan, and the rogue darted for it. So even though funny shit happened to me, the other ones were not exempt of some stupidity and hilarity. And then we came to my character. I woke up in the morning and I was, well, the typical me. I went up, went downstairs, just, 400 kilos going down the stairs, not giving too much of a shit about the steps he takes, so that's bound to create some noise. When he came up, he had woken up the dwarf that owned the tavern. A dwarf by the name of the Flippin' Dwarf. And that was also the name of the inn. This was actually an interesting little character, so we'll talk about him shortly. What happened this time was that I was trying to talk to this little dwarf and ask for breakfast if there was any to buy. He didn't have any, he only had beer. My character became angry and demanded that there must be some form of food. He didn't have any and became pissed, to which I lift the little cunt up and started to shake him, going, "I want my eggs and bacon!" But he had none to give. So even though I managed to lift the fucker up, This dwarf punched me square in the mouth, and it hurt to shit. And it eventually resulted to me getting thrown out. This dwarf took me by the neck and my pants and threw me out of the tavern. Mind you, he's a dwarf. I weigh 400 kilos. And this fucker does this. And he throws me quite a fair fucking distance as well. It turns out that this dwarf actually is one of the GM's old characters. The Flippin' Dwarf. A level 20 dwarf that decided to settle down and open an inn. He was used as a plot point in the game as an innkeeper. Kinda cute, actually. And now the best part, because, well, the mage came around, and he came at the best possible time. He had managed to rub his eyes and was fairly decently awake when he had met me outside of the tavern. He had decided to sleep in another tavern and had come to check on me. That's when he saw that I had been thrown the fuck out and the dwarf had just closed the door with a big bang. Not only that, he also saw the rogue running without any pants, holding his swollen red crotch. So he already was in the mood of, I'm not even going to fucking try. So, one thing after another, we all got up, put pants on and whatnot, and decided that, yeah, it's time to head off. We got our supplies and decided to fuck off. Now, the rest of this adventure wasn't massively interesting. Besides an interesting anecdote. You see, we traveled for the first 2 days and we managed to get to the town. The town, of course, was, well, the ghost town. Things were smashed here and there, some houses were destroyed and the gate had been forcefully opened, but there was no signs of people there. It was just, rotten and pretty much, abandoned, as you'd expect. Now, the thing is, we started to do some investigative work, where the mage managed to find a scroll and some form of crown or sword. I don't entirely remember, that was very special, and he wanted to bring that. My rogue friend managed to not find anything, I think, and me, on the other hand, well, I decided that whilst they went to the local church and the local townhouse, I went to the tavern to check if there was, any people that might, be alive and have decided to bodge themselves in the tavern because that's where all the food is located. Not because I myself was hungry or anything. Anyway, I got to the tavern, and as I got there, my GM described a smell. I could smell something. And it was coming from the tavern. And that's when I asked, okay, what can I smell? Well, it's a scent, he said. And he rolled the dice. 19. He said this is the best smell you've had in your entire life. It just oozes of goodness, something in there, covered in fat, covered in everything you want, love, and more. Cooked to such a perfection it is not done by mortal hands. This must be eaten. It is a scent that is literally made by the gods. That's how big it was. And my character became skitterish. His mouth started to water, and already he was getting prepared. So, what did he do? He ran to the tavern and checked through the open windows. He saw no people, and he started to shout.
Is there anyone in there? Do you have food? What is it that smells so good?
He became furious and was just so unsure as to what the fuck this was that smelled so good. He eventually even screamed,
Egg! Har du egg?
He got no response, but he decided he had to get in. So, he decided, well, if it is closed...
Då kan vi öppna redan ikväll!
And so, he did. He went to a distance about 20 feet away from the door and started to bounce. Yes, he started to bounce. He started to essentially bounce his legs and essentially make sure that his belly started moving. He had an idea. And so he started to bounce his belly, making sure that it got real floppy and real good, and created momentum. Upon him creating the perfect momentum, he started to run, and run towards the door he did. With all the power and muscle he had, he body slammed the door. The door that was far too small for him to enter normally was now exploding. And he ended up in a pit, of something greyish and gooish. Whatever it was, it seemed amazing, and this was where the smell was emitted from. He started to eat, and it was good. It was delicious. And he ate and ate and ate until he fell asleep. He could not control himself. And he simply fell asleep. Now, after the others had played their turns, my character woke up. And, well, what a sight he woke up to. The pit he had fallen in was full of rotten, moldy corpses. And my character had eaten a few of them. Do you remember the rumor that was going about my fucking character? This was playing in perfectly with said rumor. Now, just put that in mind, just have the rumor in mind. Now, my character, realizing what he had done, was like, oh shit. But not too discouraged, he decided that, okay, calm now, let's check why these corpses taste as delicious as they do. And he checked around the room, and in the ceiling there were runes. These runes were there for the purpose of making so that these corpses were apparently smelling good and tasting good. That was the magical effect. He was not sure as to why, but the speculation and the theory was that it was supposed to mask the smell of corpses, of rotting carcasses, and just have it smell like that of any other tavern, you know, to kind of disguise it. A poor disguise, but you know, you do what you do. Now, what happens then? The man in question is just looking over these corpses to see if there's any magic or some shit going about it. But of course, no, there's no magic going around these fuckers. However, he did notice there was some form of yellowish goo forming around their eyes and some of their ears. He became curious and decided to take a sample to put in his bag, wrapped in some leaves. And whilst he was at it, he took 2 bigger leaves, took some brain matter, and wrapped it in there. For later. The rumor. Now, after having done this, we all met up at the center of town. Upon us meeting up again, something really interesting happened. My friend who had found this document had also found that there must be something here. The town is not entirely abandoned. And while its people has most definitively abandoned it, someone or something that has entered this place has yet to leave. So some more investigation happened, and this is where the more mundane part of this story happens. Now, the thing is, we found ourselves a stairway leading down to a secret dungeon after some prodding and searching. And upon us finding this dungeon, well, down there was an undead green adult dragon. And we started to fight it. Now the thing was, this was at the point in time when I no longer had time to play this session. The session was already 8 hours long, and I was very aptly so, about to begin work. So I couldn't play anymore. And we finished up with essentially a very simple approach. They would take care of these bosses themselves, and I would take care of about 200 incoming undead that was about to charge and help their leader. They managed to defeat the green dragon, and we all fucked off from this place before it caved in. And after we defeated the big green monster, well, that was the end of the session. And everything considered, yeah, that was a pretty good session. We had a lot of fun. And that was just one session. That was a lot of crazy shit that went down. Like I said, we sat there for 8 hours playing this, and it was remarkably fun. Every time that we came to my character, laughter and hilarity sprung out as we did various references from Swedish pop culture and all manners of shit. It was hilarious, and I hope you guys find this to be hilarious too. I am trying to make it so that more of you can understand, even though there's a fair few Swedish references here that you might not immediately know about. So, I hope still this was interesting, and this can serve as a bit of a breather from the All Guardsmen party. I am, however, going to pick that up again without a shadow of a doubt. It's been a very pleasant ride so far to make the All Guardsmen party, and I'm most definitively going to continue to do so. But for now, the good must come to an end. It has been very fun to tell you guys of this story, and I hope that you all liked the animatics that was also playing in the background as you were watching. Sure, there wasn't a hell of a lot of sound, but that was because, well, enough work was put down to make sure that these animatics were playing at all, so yeah, I think you can excuse that. Any case scenario, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please remember to like and subscribe and share the videos around, and I will see you guys another time. Cheerios.